Welcome to Interviews from Mexico. I'm Laura Carlson, and I'll be your host as we look at cutting-edge issues with the men and women who know them best, here on Telesur. One of the most difficult challenges Mexico's new government will have is to stem the rampant violence in the country. 2017 was the most violent year in recent history. Despite, or perhaps because of, the billions of dollars spent and thousands of forces deployed in Mexico's current security plan, the violence continues to get worse. In response, victims' families have been organizing to search for the disappeared and demand justice. Today, we have with us Araceli Rodriguez. Araceli is a human rights defender and a leader of Mexico's victims movement. Araceli, thanks so much for being with us here on Interviews from Mexico.
Hello, good afternoon.
Araceli, I was wondering if you could tell us about the case of your son, Luis Angel, who disappeared in 2009. What happened to Luis Angel in 2009?
Claro que sí, con mucho gusto.
Of course. Luis Angel disappeared on November 16, 2009 with 6 of his colleagues and a civilian. Unfortunately, they were sent to do the federal protection in Ciudad Hidalgo, Michoacán by the Public Security Secretariat, but they weren't given what they needed to get there.
He's a police officer.
Yes, Luis Angel is a federal police officer. He was commissioned, and unfortunately, they were only given weapons and an authorizing document. The instructions given by the coordinator at the time, Rafael Avila, was that they should get there on their own. So they hired a civilian along with the federal police to take them, to bring them safely to their destination. Unfortunately, on November 16, 2009, according to an investigation, they were ambushed around 3 in the afternoon by the so-called Familia Michoacana, which is now called the Knights Templar. They were taken away, kidnapped, and the investigations say, I still have hope of finding my son, but the investigations say that they were killed, murdered on that night, November 16, 2009. They were shot. My son Luis Angel was shot first, and then his colleagues were shot. Then they burned the bodies, but they had trouble burning the bodies, so they put the fire out. I don't believe that part of the story at all. So first I light you on fire, but you don't burn up, so I put the fire out, and I cut you in pieces. They say they want to get axes and chainsaws. And then after cutting them up, they put them in acid and light them on fire again. That took all night. The burning of 8 lives. They felt like they owned these 8 innocent people. And a lot of the blame goes to the federal institution for sending them there without protection.
Of course, it's a terrible story. And I know that a lot of this investigation you actually had to do yourself, right?
Yes, of course, since the moment I realized that Luis Angel hadn't communicated with me and I couldn't get in touch with him, it was that November 16th, 2009 at night. I already had a feeling that something was wrong. My heart was telling me that things weren't right because the civilian, Sergio, he lived 2 blocks from my house. He was very close to Luis Angel. That's why he agreed to take them, because he wanted his friend to arrive safely to the federal commission. And, well, the story started off badly. 6 days later, the federal institution supposedly realized that there were 7 federal police officers missing.
6 days?
That's right. The mayor of Ciudad Hidalgo, Michoacán, Pedro Tello, who was expecting them on November 16, 2009, to choose one of the federal police officers to be the director of the municipal police of Ciudad Hidalgo. He was expecting them that day to give them the assignment and he didn't report it when they didn't show up. But at the command center in Iztapalapa in Mexico City, the coordinator didn't realize that he had lost the officers. The officers had disappeared and no one knew anything about them. So for me, that's a big lack of coordination between the different agencies, both from the federal government and the Michoacan state government.
Did you feel like it was a lack of coordination, or at what point did you begin to feel like there was a cover-up going on?
Well, yes, and to this day, I still think that they were never coordinated. They never planned well when they decided to send 7 federal police officers to a city that was so affected by organized crime. At that point, because it was right after what they called the Michoacanazo, when all of the majors in Michoacan were arrested because supposedly they had links to the mafias, to organized crime there. So it was right after that they sent these federal police there with no protection. So yes, there was bad planning, a lack of coordination, but they were also threatened by their immediate boss, the commander of the now-defunct Group 21 of the federal forces, Rapid Response. The commander they had, Raimundo Agustin Hernandez Guzman, Luis Angel told me that when he went to get his assignment on November 14, 2009, which was a Saturday, his commander told them angrily that he would be responsible if he didn't get to his destination, that his mother wouldn't be able to collect life insurance. Very strong words, definitely. So that was it. When we met the families, it was until the 21st, until November 23rd, 2009. The 7 families, we talked with each other, and all the missing officers had been threatened by the same commander in different ways, and they hadn't arrived. And to this day, we know nothing about them. Today marks another year that my son is missing.
This commander, why was he threatening these people, his own police under his command?
Well, sorry, to correct myself, I meant another month. I think I said another year, 1 more month from when he disappeared. Well, that's the same question that I am still asking myself, because the day he was brought to testify at the court, the Attorney General's office, what he said in his declaration was that he was annoyed because they were officers on his team that he trusted, and that's why he was angry at the officers. We asked them, we were able to send questions to the prosecutor for them to ask him. But why did you threaten them like that? Well, it wasn't a threat. It was just that I was angry. And it turned out to be humanly impossible to investigate that commander. The families, we made several reports against him, first to the Attorney General, then to a police internal review body, to the National Human Rights Commission, to the police inspectors, to so many different government offices. We've done everything humanly possible to find out who is responsible. Because there were suspects. More than 34 members of the Knights Templar were arrested for the incident. 18 of them were directly accused of the kidnapping and disappearance of the 7 federal police officers, of which my son Luis Angel was one, and the civilian. But unfortunately, I have realized that there is no justice. Justice doesn't exist because 4 of them have been released. Unfortunately, I have realized that there is no justice. Justice doesn't exist because 4 of them have been released. 4 of them. On Friday, I was notified, last Friday, that another of the people who did this was released, which the judge and magistrate justified by saying that the federal police had mishandled the case, that they were brought before the judge without a delay, so they had to be released.
For technicalities, it must be so frustrating. This tragedy, how did it compel you to become involved in the broader victims movement?
Well, for sure, finding out about the incompetence of the authorities, my love for Luis Angel, and my desire to find him led me to join with the movement for peace with dignity, which started after the murder of the son of the poet Javier Sicilia. May he rest in peace. It was a movement founded by victims for victims. The poet Javier gave a voice to thousands of victims across the country. We were empowered, and we went out to the streets to yell, I have a disappeared son. I have one too. Right? We got the courage to go out and yell about what was happening here in Mexico, that there was a humanitarian emergency. At that time, I joined Dialogues for Peace with former President Felipe Calderón. And from that point, I started to work with other people who were in the same situation as I was. We were where there was a lack of investigation, a lack of political will, that there were case files full of empty sheets, making it impossible to do good investigations. Because the police and prosecutors thought, and some of them still think, that you can do good investigations from your desk. That's not true. You do investigations in the field. And all this has obligated me to become a human rights defender. I was obligated because they obligated us to become lawyers, to know about law. I was actually one of the people who helped draft the general law on victims, which was approved in the Congress but vetoed by Presidente Felipe Calderón. And then Peña Nieto, when he became president, approved the law. But we are definitely still working. The families who have been able to empower ourselves, like me, they turned us into human rights defenders. And this isn't over. And it hasn't ended because of the impunity and corruption which still exists in our country.
We're about to have a new government here in Mexico. How would you characterize the achievements or the lack of achievements of the Peña Nieto administration in the area of disappearances and victims' rights over these past 6 years?
There is definitely no political will to figure it out how to do things, instead of leaving things as they are. The proof of that is that we now have a general law of forced disappearance, and disappearance committed by individuals and government officials have said, well, we already have a law. No, that's not the way it is. The law belongs to the citizens, to us, the victims. We were the ones who created this law. We created it through workshops, through conferences, with more than 40 organizations, more than 50 collectives across the country. This law is ours. It belongs to the families, because we always said that as families we didn't want absolutely anything. Thank God the general law on disappearance was approved, but there's definitely still no political will. The steps haven't been taken for the law to be really implemented. And without those things, obviously, the law is practically stalled. We have a National Citizen Council made up of our supporters, including academics and researchers. But definitely, we can see that the law hasn't been implemented, and that nothing will change as long as there is corruption and impunity. And I know I'm repeating myself, but the prosecutors aren't doing their job. You go, make a report, they give you a receipt, but they don't give you a case number, and the days go by. They are betting on the families getting tired. It's as if you went to make a report and they say, but are you sure you want to make a report? Aren't you afraid that you'll get killed? I received death threats, Laura, to tell you. Well, look, honestly, the people who have always had my contact information is just people from the government. Yeah. I can't name names because I'm not certain who it is, but in many of the threats, they used keywords from when I went to the meetings to make demands.
Do you know from who?
Well, look, honestly, the people who have always had my contact information is just people from the government. I can't name names because I'm not certain who it is, but in many of the threats, they used keywords from when I went to the meetings to make demands. They were like, for example, when I went to the Dialogues for Peace with Felipe, ex-presidente Felipe Calderón, I said I was able to make contact with Genaro Garcia Luna and Felipe Calderón. I was able to do it in the Dialogues for Peace. When I asked for a meeting with Secretary of Defense Genaro Garcia Luna, even though he hadn't met with anyone in 6 months, he met with me and other families of victims a few days after the dialogue. But only to me, He said to me very clearly to stop looking for guilty parties where they don't exist. He said that it was criminals who had taken my son, his colleagues and the civilian, and that I should think for 10 minutes how I would like to die. That it's very nice to think about death. Without lowering my gaze, I told him that I wouldn't think about how I'd like to die for even a second, because before I die, I want to find those 7 federal police officers and the civilian and to see him in jail.
When you say that the government has been working harder to not do anything than to actually do something about this problem, what do you think is the root of that? Why are they avoiding confronting such a serious and tragic problem in the country?
Well, we haven't gotten a real response like the ones we were looking for. But I want to say that those threats weren't the only ones. I was sent emails saying, "You already got what you wanted. Now think about the heads of your 3 children in the entrance to your house." That hit me really hard. That hit me hard because they're getting my other 3 kids involved. But you know what I did? What those threats did to me? They gave me strength. They empowered me. Because I realized that I was doing the right thing, that I was doing things the right way. And then, as I kept getting threats that they were going to sew my tongue, they were going to cut my tongue off, they were going to sew my mouth shut, when one day I didn't get a threat, I got depressed because I thought it meant I wasn't doing things the right way. I got to that point. It was my desperation to find Luis Angel right. And to this day, I can tell you that we want to know the truth about why things aren't being done right. There are a lot of officials who want to do things the right way, Laura. There are very good officials that take reports very well. They want to do investigations. They do everything. But we still haven't found out who coops them, who stops them from finishing their investigations. Many officials who want to do field investigations, they open a case file, they don't read it well, and they say there's no line of investigation. When we arrive, the human rights defenders, to read the case files, and we find many lines of investigations. So they are betting on that. Other times, a family was just telling me that pages had disappeared from their case file. That's very bad.
Yes.
That's very bad, right? So not long ago, I asked some officials, I said, why don't they let us do their jobs? Why?
You have more experience than they do, probably, in actually doing this job. If you could make a recommendation to the incoming government how to change this situation that has been so frustrating and that not only fails to find justice for the cases like Luis Angel's and others, but is failing to prevent further cases, what would some of those recommendations be?
Well, look, Laura, now that I'm a human rights defender and I was able to break the violent cycle, and I've helped many families that asked me for help, I helped them go through these processes. I know that we can be resilient because I've already been through this. One perpetrator helped me be resilient. When I talked to him, and he told me how they had killed Luis Angel, what had happened to Luis Angel. But he also told me the story of his life, what it was like. That I discovered the human being, that human being and how he had gotten to the point of committing so much evil. And the fact was that he couldn't get out of jail. So that this doesn't happen again. So other people don't have to go through what Luis Angel went through. And so other families don't have to go through what we went through. Because I said to him, think about it. You are in the center. You destroyed your entire family there. You destroyed yourself, and you destroyed my son's life. You destroyed my life. And what I would recommend to people is that they have faith and hope. I have hope, and I hope I don't have to take my words back now when the new president takes office in December. And I want it to be December already, really. I want to see him as president because he's promised so many things like ending corruption and impunity. And that's the key to his success, right? Because we are still living through processes of corruption and impunity. Look, Laura, I have a case about a very close relative on July 8th this year in the Central Market in Ecatepec. She was accused of stealing a wallet that was never even stolen. But instead of taking her to a court so she could prove her innocence, what the police who arrested her, they were from CUSAEM, which is a very strange institution. It's basically a body of security guards, but it's strange because they're not from here or there. They're a part of the Citizen Security Secretariat. But they're security guards, so they don't know what they are. But what they did to my political niece is not nice to hear about. It was very bad. They took her and her brother to the CUSAEM offices. Instead of taking them before a court so they could defend themselves, they beat them, tortured them, they shocked them.
So she would confess to...
While her brother, so they would admit to stealing something that wasn't even stolen. And the wallet, they said, had 750 pesos in it. For her to get free, they asked for 2,000 pesos. So from that point, you can see clearly the abuse of authority, extortion, illegal arrest, and torture. When we went to make a report to the anti-corruption prosecutor, the only thing they wrote down was abuse of authority.
So these are police, somewhere between private and public in some Netherland of a legal void, that are committing these crimes against a citizen.
That's right. And I would say with confidence that this isn't the only case, and it won't be the last case. Why? Because there's nothing stopping it. Because the anti-corruption prosecutor, I think they should do more rapid response. You make a report because they beat her and they extorted money from her, but there's no immediate reaction. They say they're going to investigate. So what are we talking about? When is corruption going to end? Will we just wait for the police to leave and there won't be any punishment? Well, in my case, at least, that won't happen because they did something to my family again. Today, my niece can't get out of bed, Laura.
Sure.
They kicked her in the stomach, in the pelvis, until they got tired. They left her with a cervical sprain. They pulled her hair out. They shocked her. Really, it's not fair.
And there's still nobody who's been arrested for this.
No, and no one's been arrested. The only concrete thing we have is a receipt for the report we made. We don't even have a case number, so that the State of Mexico Victims' Rights Agency could give my niece psychological treatment. She needs a case number. So do you see the level of incompetence of the anti-corruption prosecutor? It hurts, and it makes me angry, and I felt that anger again when this happened to my niece. Even though I've been in this for a long time, but it touched my family again.
And this is a specialized force that's supposed to be against corruption in the other forces, and they don't do anything. López Obrador has said that he's going to end impunity exactly of this kind, but what can he do if there's so many people who are perpetuating it every single day in cases like this and hundreds others throughout the country?
What I would recommend to the new president who is waiting to take office, I would recommend that he clean the structure. That's what he said he would do. And he is the head of the structure. If he cleans up the heads of all the government agencies and he puts new people there, but people with a professional ethic, people with good preparation, I'm sure that López Obrador is going to do a good job. But if López Obrador leaves those people at the heads of the agencies, those people who haven't served the institutions well, and I'm not talking about the people at lower levels, because the government employees who are at the lower levels, they do their jobs well. The issue is that a lot of times the incompetence comes from up top. And between bad coordination, bad planning, the issue is that a lot of times the incompetence comes from up top. And between bad coordination, bad planning, coordination, and collaboration, the only people left behind are the victims. Because while the different bureaucratic cells fight with each other, well, the disappeared don't appear. There are more and more disappearances, more and more feminicides, more and more human trafficking, more disappearances of migrants and the citizens. We are definitely living through a humanitarian crisis in Mexico.
Pretty much recognized on an international basis that there's a human rights crisis and a humanitarian crisis as a result of what's going on here. In addition to purging individuals who are not doing their job or who are actually committing crimes, it seems like there'd have to be some prosecutions as well, no?
Well, of course, and I was happy to hear that today, that they are going to change the Constitution to take away immunity from the president if he commits crimes, so that he can be investigated. That's very good, Laura, because if we don't make an example of public servants who commit crimes, neither impunity or corruption will end. A clear case of that is the torture of my niece. If they had really wanted to help, they would have acted. They would have arrested the police officers who committed the crime and put them in jail. Then they could have had a chance to defend themselves. But what they said is that now, with the new accusatory criminal justice system, you can't do those things. What I think is that they've never been able to do anything. They've never been able to have a quick response, and that's why crimes aren't resolved.
And so these kinds of prosecutions, including to the presidency, if they change the Constitution to make the president open to prosecution in serious crimes, would send a message that could conceivably begin to change this culture of abuse that exists on every level.
Of course, it's very positive. And us, the people who are victims, there are thousands of us. That's what we say. We need to make examples of public servants who commit crimes, and they can defend themselves, Laura. I know that. Listen, my son is a disappeared federal police officer, and I know that there are good police and bad police. But the bad police, well, they should be investigated, punished, and go to trial. And if they want to defend themselves, they can do that. But what's happening? There are no sanctions, no punishment, and they don't stop corruption. So this is leading to more and more crimes being committed by the police because there has never been even one exemplary punishment.
That's been the history. No matter what happens from above with the laws and with new practices, there's going to be an important role for people like you, defenders of human rights, and the victims movement. How do you see that role going forward?
Well, honestly, I embrace this role, and I think we will do a good job because we, the human rights defenders, the victims who get death threats, we are the ones who show our faces and confront this day to day. So we confront it, and we always leave our houses crossing ourselves because we don't know if we're going to come back because we've been nuisance to those in power, and the protection we've gotten from the government has been minimal. There are government officials who have up to 16 bodyguards, and they don't even use them. There are former officials whose children still get protection from bodyguards of the Criminal Investigation Agency, when it shouldn't be that way. And the people we are confronting, the investigators, the people who talk to every day, accompanying victims to keep investigating. What else happened? And the people we are confronting, the investigators, the people we talk to every day, accompanying victims to keep investigating. What else happened? What should we do? What's next? We ride in simple cars if it rains. For example, for me, if it rains right now while I'm on my way home, I live in Ixtapaluca. And I'm not afraid to say it because they already know where I live. And I don't have to hide anything because I've always been legitimate in what I do. And I'm always going to yell the name of Luis Angel and his 6 colleagues, federal police officers, that were sent to the slaughterhouse like cannon fodder. There are a lot of people responsible. And of course, I would never forget to mention the civilian. But he was a victim of the government itself because the government didn't do its job like it should have. So Sergio left his wife and 2 children behind.
Araceli, thanks so much for your bravery and your perseverance in this. And thanks for joining us here in the studio.
Muchísimas gracias a ti, Laura.
Thanks a lot to you, Laura, and to your team for inviting me. It's very important to me to make Luis Angel's name heard and to say that investigating, punishing, and eradicating crime is a job for everyone in Mexico.
Of course. And thank you. We'll be back next week on Interviews from Mexico.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre.